The sterile air of the doctor's office hung heavy as Will and Leah Lancaster sat side by side, their hands clasped tightly but damp with nerves. Dr. Patel, the fertility specialist, looked at them with practiced compassion as he opened the folder on his desk.
There's still a chance.
He said, his tone carefully measured.
But it's slim.
Leah felt the word slim hit her like a stone. Her grip on Will's hand tightened.
The treatments we've tried so far haven't yielded the results we were hoping for.
Dr. Patel continued.
We can explore a few more options, but realistically, it may take months, possibly years, and even then, there are no guarantees.
Leah's throat tightened. Will shifted uncomfortably in his chair, avoiding eye contact.
I recommend giving it another 6 months.
Dr. Patel added gently.
But I also think it's worth considering other options. Adoption, for instance, could be a wonderful way to build your family.
The word adoption hung in the air, unspoken yet loud enough to rattle Leah's carefully held composure. She forced a polite smile as the doctor handed them some pamphlets, but her mind raced. Adoption felt like surrender, an admission that her body had failed her. Will thanked the doctor quietly, his voice subdued as they rose to leave. Leah walked out of the office like a ghost, her head down and her heart heavy. The sound of the car engine filled the tense silence. Will's eyes remained fixed on the road as Leah stared out the window, watching the city blur past.
I don't want to give up yet,
Leah said suddenly, her voice trembling but firm. Will sighed, his grip tightening on the steering wheel.
No, I'm not saying we give up.
He said, glancing at her briefly.
But maybe this is the universe's way of telling us there's another path.
Leah turned to him, her face a mix of hurt and frustration.
I don't want another path, Will. I want our child, my own blood. I want to look at them and see us.
And I want to be a father, Leah.
Will replied, his tone sharper than he intended.
Blood or not. Family isn't just about biology. Can't we at least consider adoption?
Leah's eyes sparkled, her emotions threatening to spill over.
You think it's so easy, don't you? Just move on. Just change everything we've dreamed about? I can't do that, Will.
Maybe it's not about what's easy.
He shot back, his frustration bubbling to the surface.
Maybe it's about what's possible. Maybe it's about giving a child a home, giving us a chance to be parents instead of chasing something that might never happen.
Leah's lips pressed into a thin line as she turned back toward the window, a single tear sliding down her cheek. The silence that followed was suffocating, filled with words left unsaid. That evening, the air in their house was just as tense. Leah poured herself a glass of wine but barely touched it. Will buried himself in his laptop, pretending to catch up on work. Finally, Leah broke the silence.
You don't get it, Will. It's not just about being a mother. It's about the connection, the bond, the knowledge that they're ours, a part of us. Can adoption ever give us that?
Will closed his laptop and looked at her, his expression softening.
Maybe it's not about what they give us, Leah. Maybe it's about what we can give them, love, stability, a family. Isn't that enough?
Leah didn't answer. She couldn't. Her heart felt torn between her longing for her own child and the reality Will was forcing her to confront. The tension lingered as they went to bed that night, each lying awake on their respective sides, lost in their thoughts. Neither of them knew how soon their idea of family would be tested in ways they had never imagined. And then it was nearly midnight when they heard a knock on the door, sharp and insistent against the sound of the rain outside.
Who knocks at this hour?
Will muttered, pulling on a sweater. Leah followed him, her unease growing as the knocking continued.
Maybe it's a neighbor or something urgent,
she suggested, her voice tinged with apprehension. Will unlocked the door and opened it a crack. What he saw made him pull it open wider. Standing on the doorstep was a small girl, drenched from head to toe. Her brown hair clung to her face in wet strands, and her wide eyes darted nervously between Will and Leah. She clutched a ragged stuffed rabbit in one arm, her other hand gripping a small battered suitcase.
Are you Will Lancaster?
She asked, her voice so soft the rain almost drowned it out. Will blinked, trying to process what was happening.
Yes, I am. Who are you?
The girl hesitated, shivering as the cold rain soaked through her thin coat.
I'm Ava.
She finally whispered.
My mom told me you're my dad.
Leah gasped audibly from behind Will, her hand flying to her mouth.
What did you say?
She asked, her voice shaking. Ava's lip trembled and tears mixed with the rain streaming down her cheeks.
My mom died 2 weeks ago.
She said, her voice cracking.
She told me your name before she went to heaven. I didn't know where else to go.
Will stood frozen, the girl's words echoing in his mind. Leah, recovering first, gently placed a hand on his arm.
Will,
She said softly.
let's bring her inside. She's freezing.
Leah ushered Ava into the warm house, grabbing a towel from the hall closet and wrapping it around the trembling child. Ava stood awkwardly, looking around as though she wasn't sure if she was safe yet.
Here, sweetheart.
Leah said, kneeling in front of her.
Let's get you dry. You must be freezing.
Ava nodded but stayed silent, clutching the stuffed rabbit tighter to her chest. Her wide eyes darted nervously between Will and Leah, as if afraid of their reactions. Will finally found his voice.
Ava, can you tell us more about your mom? What did she say about me?
He said carefully, kneeling to her eye level. Ava hesitated, her fingers tightening around the rabbit's ears.
Her name was Clara.
She said quietly.
She told me you used to know each other, a long time ago. But she never told me about you until she got sick.
Will felt like the ground had shifted beneath him. Clara, a name from a chapter of his life he thought had long since closed. He stared at Ava, searching her face for any resemblance, but it was too hard to tell. Leah studied Ava's worn clothes and the battered suitcase by her feet.
Where have you been staying, Ava?
She asked gently.
Nowhere.
Ava murmured.
We used to live in shelters, but when Mom got sick, we didn't have money anymore. I've been sleeping wherever I can.
Her voice cracked again and tears surfaced in her eyes.
I was scared. I didn't know what to do, but she said I should come find you.
Leah glanced at Will, her face a mixture of suspicion and compassion.
Will,
She said quietly.
can I talk to you for a moment?
In the kitchen, Leah turned to Will, her voice low but urgent.
This can't just be a coincidence. What if she's telling the truth? What if she really is your daughter?
Will ran a hand through his hair, his thoughts in chaos.
Leah, I don't know. I haven't seen Clara in over a decade. If she really had a child, why wouldn't she tell me?
Leah frowned.
I don't know, but that little girl has been through something terrible. We can't just send her back out there.
Will sighed, his shoulders slumping.
Of course not. But Leah, what if this isn't real? What if she's lying?
What is she, like 10? Do you think a 10-year-old would make up something like this?
Leah countered.
Look at her. She's terrified.
Will leaned against the counter, his mind racing. Clara, Ava. The timeline fit, but it all felt surreal. When they returned, Ava was sitting on the edge of the couch, her hands clasped tightly around her rabbit. She looked up at them with wide, tear-filled eyes.
Am I in trouble?
She asked timidly. Leah softened, sitting beside her.
No, sweetheart, you're not in trouble.
She said, brushing a damp strand of hair from Ava's face.
We just want to help you, okay?
Ava nodded, though her grip on the rabbit didn't loosen. Will cleared his throat.
Ava, you can stay here tonight. We'll figure everything out in the morning.
Ava's face lit up with relief.
Thank you.
She whispered. Leah offered a strained smile, but as she looked at the little girl, a nagging sense of unease crept into her heart. Something about this situation didn't add up, and she couldn't shake the feeling that the answers might not be what they were hoping for. The smell of cocoa filled the warm living room as Ava sat curled on the edge of the couch, clutching the oversized mug Leah had given her. She glanced nervously at Will, then down at the rabbit in her lap, her fingers absently stroking its tattered ears.
My mom was sick for a long time.
Ava began, her voice soft and uneven.
She didn't talk about you until she knew she was going to heaven.
Leah shot a glance at Will, whose expression was a mix of shock and uncertainty.
What did she tell you?
Will asked carefully.
She said you didn't know about me.
Ava said, her gaze flickering toward the floor.
She said she wanted me to find you, that you'd take care of me.
Her voice cracked at the end, and she quickly hid her face in her rabbit. Will's heart twisted. Clara. It was a name he hadn't heard in 10 years. They had dated briefly. It was a storm of romance that ended as quickly as it began when Clara left town with no explanation. He had buried those memories long ago, never imagining they might resurface like this. Leah, sitting stiffly in the armchair across from them, studied Ava intently.
How old are you, Ava?
She asked, her tone soft but probing.
10.
Ava replied, looking up at Leah with wide, glistening eyes. Leah's mind raced. The timeline matched, but something about the girl's story felt off.
Where did you live before?
She pressed. Ava hesitated, clutching the mug tighter.
10. We moved around a lot.
She murmured.
Mostly shelters. Mom said it was safer that way.
Leah nodded but didn't look satisfied. She glanced at Will, who seemed lost in thought, then forced a smile at Ava.
Sabotha. You should get some rest, sweetheart. It's been a long day.
That night, as Ava slept in the guest room, Leah cornered Will in the kitchen.
We need proof.
She said firmly.
Proof?
Will repeated, startled.
A DNA test, Will.
Leah said, her voice low but insistent.
We can't just take her word for it.
Will sighed, running a hand through his hair.
She's just a kid, Leah. She's been through a lot. Can't we give her a little time?
Time to what? To lie to us? To steal from us?
Leah's tone was sharp. Will frowned.
You don't really think she's lying, do you?
I don't know.
Leah admitted, folding her arms.
But until we're sure, we need to be careful.
Reluctantly, Will agreed to the DNA test. In the meantime, Ava stayed with them. The first few days with Ava were lifeless. She seemed shy but eager to help, always quick to tidy up or fetch something when asked.
She's just trying to fit in.
Will said one evening as Leah watched the girl set the table with quiet precision. But Leah couldn't ignore the unease that crept over her whenever Ava was near. There was something too deliberate about the way she moved through their home, her curious eyes lingering on items like Will's watch or Leah's jewelry box. Leah's suspicions deepened when small items began to go missing. At first, it was just loose change from the counter, a few coins here and there. Then her favorite bracelet disappeared. A few days later, Will noticed cash missing from his wallet.
Are you sure you didn't misplace it?
Will asked when Leah confronted him about the missing bracelet.
I'm sure.
Leah snapped.
And I think I know who took it.
She cornered Ava that evening as the girl was helping clear the dinner table.
Ava.
Leah said, her tone carefully neutral.
Have you seen my bracelet? The silver one with the blue stones?
Ava froze, her eyes wide.
No,
She said quickly.
I haven't seen it.
Leah leaned closer.
Are you sure? It was on my dresser yesterday, and now it's gone.
I didn't take it.
Ava cried, tears welling up in her eyes.
I promise.
Will stepped in, placing a hand on Leah's arm.
Leah, enough.
He said firmly.
She said she didn't take it. She's just a kid.
Will interrupted.
She's been through so much. Maybe she's scared or confused, but accusing her isn't helping.
Leah bit her tongue, her frustration simmering. That night, as Ava slept, she searched the girl's backpack.
She's just a
At the
scared
bottom
little
of the
girl.
bag, beneath a tangle of clothes and the stuffed rabbit, Leah found her bracelet.
Is
Her
she,
heart
Will?
sank, a mix of anger
Or is she
and
something else
revenge
entirely?
surging through her. She showed it to Will the next morning, her expression grim.
She's hiding something,
Leah said.
and we need to get to the bottom of this.
Will stared at the bracelet in silence, his face unreadable. He said finally, though his voice lacked conviction. Leah countered. The air between them grew colder, the divide widening as Leah's doubts clashed with Will's growing attachment to the child. And in the shadows, Ava watched them both, her wide eyes filled with something neither of them could quite read. It was a lazy afternoon when Leah first noticed the car. A dark sedan idled across the street, its windows tinted just enough to obscure the driver. She wouldn't have thought much of it if Ava hadn't reacted so strangely. As Leah passed by the living room window, she caught a glimpse of Ava standing motionless in the kitchen. The girl's face had gone pale, and her fingers gripped the edge of the counter so tightly her knuckles turned white. Leah frowned.
Ava, are you okay?
Ava snapped her head toward Leah, forcing a weak smile.
Yeah, I'm fine.
She stammered, but her voice wavered. Leah followed Ava's gaze to the car outside.
Who is that?
She asked, her tone curious but firm.
No one.
Ava blurted out, her voice cracking. She grabbed her stuffed rabbit and bolted toward the back door.
I'll be right back.
Ava!
Leah called, hurrying to follow. She reached the door just as Ava slipped out and ran toward the car. From the shadowed interior of the sedan, a man's hand extended, holding out a folded piece of paper. Ava hesitated, glancing nervously back at the house before taking it. The man said something Leah couldn't hear, and then the car pulled away, its tires kicking up pebbles. Leah stepped outside, her heart pounding.
Ava, who was that?
She demanded.
It was nothing.
Ava said, shoving the paper into her pocket.
Just someone from before. My mom knew this man.
Before? Ava, if something's wrong, you need to tell me.
But Ava turned and darted back into the house, leaving Leah standing in the driveway, her instincts screaming that something was very, very wrong. That night, she told Will about the encounter.
It was probably just another boyfriend Clara had.
He said dismissively.
Will, she was terrified.
Leah insisted.
And what about the note? She's hiding something.
She's been through a lot.
Will said, his tone soft but firm.
We have to give her time.
But Leah couldn't shake the feeling that time wasn't on their side. Unable to ignore her gut, Leah hired a private investigator the next day.
Something's not right,
she told him, describing the car, the man, and Ava's strange behavior. It didn't take long for the investigator to uncover shocking details. Clara, Ava's mother, was alive, and not only alive, but actively involved in a string of cons targeting affluent families. Her criminal record included theft, fraud, and manipulation. The man in the car was one of her known accomplices. Leah's blood ran cold as the investigator laid out the facts. Clara had been using Ava as a pawn, sending her to pose as a long-lost daughter to gain access to homes and resources. It was a carefully made scheme, one Clara had executed before. Leah didn't tell Will immediately. Instead, she made a plan. That evening, she convinced Will to pretend they were going out for dinner.
We'll leave the house and watch from the cameras,
she said, her voice tight with determination.
Leah, this is crazy.
Is it?
Leah shot back.
Because if I'm wrong, we'll know. And if I'm right?
She didn't finish the sentence. Reluctantly, Will agreed. From a parked car a block away, Leah and Will watched the live feed from the hidden cameras they had set up in the house. At first, nothing happened. Ava wandered around the living room, looking lost. But just as Leah was beginning to doubt herself, the front door creaked open. A woman stepped inside, her face hidden by a hood. Ava ran to her, clutching the note from earlier.
Did you get the money?
The woman said, her voice low but sharp. Ava shook her head, tears streaming down her face.
They're nice people, Mom. I can't do it. I can't.
Yes, the woman was Clara.
Don't you dare ruin this for us.
Clara snapped, grabbing Ava by the arm.
Do you know how much work it took to set this up? Get the jewelry. Now.
Ava sobbed, shaking her head.
I can't. I won't. I'm sorry.
Clara raised her hand as if to strike Ava, but Leah and Will burst through the door just in time.
That's enough,
Leah shouted. Clara froze, her eyes narrowing. Police arrived moments later, arresting Clara and her partner, who had been waiting nearby in the car. Ava clung to Will, sobbing uncontrollably.
I'm sorry.
Ava cried.
She made me do it. She said you were my dad.
Will's heart broke as he held the trembling girl.
It's okay.
He said softly.
You're safe now.
The DNA results arrived the following week, revealing that Ava was not Will's biological daughter. Leah showed him the envelope with trembling hands, unsure how he would react. Will was embarrassed. He had started to feel for Ava as a father, and everything seemed to match too. Clara had been Will's girlfriend, and Ava could be his daughter. But sadly, this wasn't the case. Will's heart was shattered. He asked the police to take everyone into custody and went to his room sadly. Later, he apologized to Leah for not trusting her. The next day, Will didn't go to work and stayed at home. Leah went out to buy a gift for him because their anniversary was just 1 week away. The door opened and Leah entered, holding a bag.
I've got a surprise for you, Will.
She said.
What have you got for me in that bag?
Will said.
Well, our anniversary is due next week, and I thought you would like what I brought for you.
Leah said. Then, she waved her hand and Ava entered the house.
She's been through enough. We can't abandon her now. She's part of our family now, blood or not.
Will was extremely happy and hugged Leah and Ava. In a quiet, emotional moment, Ava whispered,
Can I call you Mom and Dad now?
Will hugged her tightly again.
You've always been our daughter, Ava.
In the end, Ava found the family she had always longed for, and Will and Leah found the child they never thought they'd have.